Stop crying like a baby. You're embarrassing me in front of everyone. Your marriage should be your safe haven. But for Mike Peterson, it became his personal hell. This is the story of how one man's quiet strength changed everything. And trust me, you won't believe how it ends. The fancy restaurant buzzed with weekend energy. Crystal glasses clinked, expensive perfume wafted through the air, and Sarah Peterson's laughter rang out above it all. But not the kind that warms your heart. No, this was the sharp, mocking kind that cuts deep. "Look at him. Can't even order wine without stuttering," Sarah announced to their dinner companions, rolling her eyes dramatically. "I swear, sometimes I don't know why I married such a pushover." Mike sat there, his face burning red as he gripped his napkin under the table. The other couples shifted uncomfortably, but no one said a word. They never did. But what Sarah didn't know was that this dinner would be the last time she'd get to mock her husband. Because Mike had finally reached his breaking point, and what he did next would shock everyone who knew them. Quick pause. If you've ever dealt with someone who treated you like dirt, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. The truth is, Mike Peterson wasn't always the quiet, withdrawn man sitting at that table. 10 years ago, he was a rising star at his engineering firm, known for his brilliant mind and innovative solutions. That's when he first met Sarah Mitchell, the dazzling PR executive who seemed to light up every room she entered. Their whirlwind romance had all the makings of a perfect love story. Mike was captivated by Sarah's confidence and charm, while she claimed to admire his intelligence and kind heart. Within 6 months, they were married in a lavish ceremony that made the local society pages. But the warning signs were there from the start. If only Mike had known where to look. It started small. A cutting remark here, a dismissive gesture there. Sarah would interrupt Mike during dinner parties, finishing his stories with an exaggerated eye roll. "Oh, honey, you're telling it all wrong. Let me explain what actually happened." She criticized everything. His clothes, his friends, the way he held his fork. Nothing was ever good enough. And slowly but surely, the confident engineer began to disappear, replaced by a man who second-guessed his every move. The real turning point came 3 months before that fateful dinner. Mike had just landed the biggest project of his career, a revolutionary green energy solution that could transform his company. He rushed home, eager to share the news with his wife. Sarah, you won't believe what happened today." Mike burst through the door, his face lit up with genuine excitement for the first time in months. Sarah barely looked up from her phone. "What is it now, Mike? Did you finally learn how to tie your tie properly?" "No, I got the Henderson project. The one I told you about? It's a $50 million deal, and they chose my design over everyone else's." Sarah's response. A long sigh, and these crushing words. "Oh, great. Another boring project you'll obsess over. Just try not to embarrass me at the company dinner this time, okay? If you're wondering what Mike did next, make sure you're subscribed. This story takes an unexpected turn that nobody saw coming." The moment he found Sarah's text messages mocking him to her friends, the devastating realization that she'd been undermining him at work, the night he overheard her laughing about him at a neighbor's party, the sudden death of his mentor that made him reevaluate everything, the sacred meetings with a divorce attorney, the careful documentation of emotional abuse, the strategic financial planning, the quiet strength he found in therapy. Quick question. What would you do in Mike's shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. That night at the restaurant, as Sarah launched into another cruel story about his inadequacies, Mike calmly stood up. The room fell silent. "I've been waiting for this moment," he said, his voice steady. "Sarah, I want to thank you." Sarah's mocking smile froze. "Thank me? For what?" "For showing me exactly who you are. Every insult, every cruel joke, every attempt to break me down, it all led to this moment." He pulled out an envelope and placed it on the table. "What's this?" Sarah's voice wavered for the first time. "Divorce papers, already signed. Oh, and one more thing. Remember that boring project you mocked? It just made me a millionaire. Good luck finding someone else to belittle." The aftermath of Mike's public stand. Sarah's desperate attempts to save face. The support Mike received from friends and family. His journey to healing and rebuilding. The unexpected twist of meeting someone who truly valued him. The lessons learned about self-worth and standing up to abuse. If this story touched you, subscribe to hear more real-life tales of triumph over adversity. Together, we can help others find their strength. The psychology of emotional abuse. The impact of public humiliation on mental health. The importance of maintaining financial independence. The role of support systems in escaping toxic relationships. The process of rebuilding self-esteem. The warning signs of emotional manipulation. The power of standing up for oneself. The journey to healing and self-discovery. But here's what nobody knew about Mike's journey. The part that makes this story truly extraordinary. While Sarah was busy tearing him down at every dinner party, Mike had been secretly rebuilding himself from the inside out. It started with a chance encounter at his local coffee shop, 3 weeks before the restaurant confrontation. "Large Americano for Mike," called out the barista. As Mike reached for his drink, his hand brushed against someone else's. "Oh, I'm sorry." He started to apologize automatically, the way Sarah had conditioned him to do. "No need to apologize," said a kind voice. "I'm Tom. Looks like we ordered the same thing." That chance meeting with Tom Henderson, a retired psychologist who'd spent 30 years helping people rebuild their lives, would change everything. "You flinch," Tom observed during their third coffee meeting. "Every time someone raises their voice in here, you flinch." Mike started to deny it, but Tom's gentle presence made him pause. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's seen it before," Tom replied, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "Want to know what else I see?" Mike nodded, bracing for criticism. "I see a brilliant mind trapped in a cage of someone else's making. The question is, are you ready to find the key?" Weekly meetings with Tom that slowly rebuilt his confidence. The journal entries documenting his journey. The first time he stood up to Sarah in private. The small victories that led to bigger ones. The support group he found through Tom. The professional achievements he kept secret from Sarah. The careful planning of his escape. The building of a hidden support network. Mike sat in his office, staring at his computer screen. The email that would change everything blinked back at him. "Dear Mr. Peterson, your green energy patent has been approved. As per our discussion, Company X would like to move forward with acquisition." The number at the bottom of the email made his hands shake. 8 figures, more than enough to start over. But Mike didn't move. Instead, he thought about the conversation he'd had with Sarah that morning. "Really, Mike? You're wearing that tie again? God, sometimes I think you're trying to embarrass me." Mike's growing success at work while maintaining a facade at home. Sarah's increasing attempts to control him as she sensed something changing. The network of friends slowly gathering around Mike. The careful documentation of every incident, the strategic moving of assets. the building of a new life. In secret. Mike stood in front of the mirror, practicing. Tom had taught him this technique. "I deserve respect," he whispered, then shook his head. I deserve respect. His phone buzzed, another mocking text from Sarah to her friends, accidentally sent to the group chat including him. "Stuck at another boring dinner with Mike tonight. At least the wine will be good. Maybe he'll cry again when he can't pronounce the French menu items." But this time, Mike didn't feel the usual stab of shame. Instead, he felt something else. Pity. The detailed preparation for his escape, the gathering of evidence, the building of a new support system, the careful financial planning, the emotional journey from victim to survivor, the impact on their social circle, the ripple effects in their community. Sarah never noticed the small changes. She didn't see how Mike stopped apologizing for everything. She missed how he started making decisions without asking her permission. She was too busy mocking him to notice he'd stopped seeking her approval. But others noticed. "You seem different," Mike's colleague James mentioned during lunch. "Stronger somehow." Mike just smiled. "Let's just say I'm finally waking up." The final preparations for his escape. The gathering storm of Sarah's increasing abuse. The quiet strength Mike developed. The network of support he built. The documentation of every incident. The strategic planning of his new life. What Sarah didn't know, as she mocked Mike, that final time, was that everyone at the table had already seen the evidence. The videos, the texts, the emails. They were all there as witnesses, carefully chosen and placed. When Mike stood up to deliver his speech, it wasn't just for him. It was for every person who'd ever been told they weren't enough. Sarah's desperate attempts to spin the story, the community's rallying around Mike, the impact on their social circle, the professional consequences for Sarah, the healing process for Mike, the unexpected support from unlikely allies, the rebuilding of relationships, the lessons learned and shared. But here's the real twist. Mike's story didn't end with the divorce. 6 months later, he founded a support group for survivors of emotional abuse. A year after that, his green energy patent revolutionized solar power storage. And Sarah? Last anyone heard, she was still trying to explain away that night to anyone who would listen. But the thing about truth is once it's out there, no amount of manipulation can put it back in the box. Remember this. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one gathering the strength to roar, and when they do, the world better be ready. The ripple effects of standing up to abuse. The healing journey, the rebuilding of self-worth, the power of community support, the importance of documentation, the process of starting over, the journey to true self-discovery, Mike's first public speaking engagement about emotional abuse, the moment he helped another victim find their voice, the rebuilding of his relationship with his family, the professional success that followed his personal liberation, the new, healthy relationships he developed, the lessons he learned about self-worth, the impact his story had on others. Remember, your value isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply decide that you deserve better. Hey, if this story's hitting close to home, drop a like. It helps more people find this video who might need to hear it. But there's another layer to this story that changes everything. A truth that Mike had kept hidden from everyone, even Tom. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before Mike as he walked toward the oncology ward. His father, once a towering figure of strength, lay weakened by cancer in room 412. "Son," his father whispered, gripping Mike's hand with surprising strength. "I need to tell you something." Mike leaned closer, noting how the morning light cast shadows across his father's gaunt face. "I saw it," his father continued. "At Christmas, the way she speaks to you, the way you've changed." He paused, fighting for breath. "I was wrong not to say something sooner." Mike felt his chest tighten. "Dad, don't. No, listen, I let your mother treat me the same way for 20 years. Watched myself disappear, bit by bit." His father's eyes filled with tears. "Don't make my mistake, son. Don't wait until you're lying in a hospital bed to find your courage." The impact of Mike's father's final words. The parallel between his parents' marriage and his own. The generational pattern of abuse he discovered. The secret strength he drew from his father's warning. The subtle ways Sarah reminded him of his mother. The healing of childhood wounds. The breaking of destructive patterns. "My name is Rachel." The woman spoke softly, her hands trembling around her coffee cup. "And I think I need help." Mike sat in the circle, now 6 months after his divorce, leading his third support group meeting. As Rachel shared her story, he noticed the familiar patterns. "He tells me I'm lucky to have him. Nobody else would put up with me. I can't seem to do anything right." That's when Mike shared something he'd never told anyone before. 2 weeks before I left my wife," Mike began, his voice steady, "I found a letter my father had written me before he died. He'd hidden it in an old photo album." The room fell silent as Mike pulled out the worn envelope. "Dear Mike, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. But there's something you need to know. The day you were born, I made a promise to protect you from everything that could hurt you. I failed. I let you grow up watching your mother tear me down, teaching you that love means accepting abuse. Son, I was wrong. Love should lift you up, not break you down. It's never too late to rewrite your story. Find the strength I couldn't. Break the cycle. Love, Dad." The impact of generational trauma, the healing power of shared experiences, the formation of a larger support network, the ripple effect of breaking silence, the transformation of pain into purpose, the building of a new legacy. Mike stood at the podium, facing a room full of mental health professionals at their annual conference. His hands weren't shaking anymore. "Emotional abuse doesn't leave visible scars," he began, "but the wounds run deeper than any physical injury. Today, I want to share not just my story, but the stories of countless others who found their voice. The development of Mike's advocacy work, the creation of a nonprofit organization, the impact on policy changes, the bridges built between survivors, the transformation of pain into purpose, the unexpected allies who joined his cause. 2 years after the divorce, Mike hosted his first Thanksgiving. Around his table sat an unlikely family. Tom, his mentor, Rachel from the support group, James, his loyal colleague, and several others who'd become crucial parts of his journey. As they shared stories and laughter, Mike's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "I miss who we were. Can we talk?" Mike looked around at the genuine warmth and love surrounding him, then quietly deleted the message. Some chapters are better left closed. The rebuilding of holiday traditions, the creation of chosen family, the strength found in community, the power of genuine connections, the healing nature of shared meals, the importance of boundaries. Mike stood in front of his old house, now sold to a young family. He watched as children played in the yard where he once walked on eggshells. A woman approached from next door, his former neighbor, Karen. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "We all saw it. We just didn't know what to do." Mike smiled gently. "That's why I do what I do now, so others will know." the ripple effect of speaking up, the transformation of bystanders into advocates, the healing of community wounds, the power of forgiveness, the importance of education, the cycle of positive change. And now please welcome our keynote speaker. The announcer's voice filled the auditorium. Engineering innovator and advocate, Michael Peterson. As Mike approached the podium, he caught his reflection in the teleprompter glass. His father would have been proud. Innovation isn't just about technology, he began. Sometimes, the most important breakthrough is finding your own voice. The integration of personal and professional growth. The impact on corporate culture. The development of workplace policies. The recognition of emotional abuse. The creation of safe spaces. The power of vulnerable leadership. Mike sat in his study, surrounded by letters from people his story had helped. On his desk lay the final draft of his book, Breaking the Silence, A Journey from Survival to Strength. His phone lit up with a notification. Another review of his green energy patent implementation. Another success. But these days, success meant something different to Mike. Real success was measured in the courage of the people who reached out to him, in the lives changed, in the cycles broken, the long-term impact of breaking free, the ripple effect of one person's courage, the transformation of pain into purpose, the building of a legacy of hope, the power of authentic living, the journey from victim to advocate. Sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't in the leaving, it's in the living that comes after, in choosing, day after day, to remain true to yourself, in using your voice not just to tell your story, but to help others find their way out of the darkness. The ongoing journey of healing, the impact on future generations, the transformation of support systems, the evolution of personal boundaries, the development of healthy relationships, the power of continued growth. Remember, your story isn't over when you walk away. Sometimes, it's just beginning. The growth of Mike's support network, the expansion of his advocacy work, the development of new programs, the impact on policy changes, the transformation of corporate culture, the healing of family systems, the power of breaking silence.